everybody, this is Sarah Whitaker.
And Salty Dalty.
Here for Working the World, Episode 7. Today we talk about the bad guys, or more formally known as heels or Rudos, and why they have fans. We're also going to be talking about the faces, or technicos, and why the crowds hate them. All this with a little history and stirring the pot. You can find us all at your favorite podcast platforms and leave a comment on Sarah Whitaker's YouTube at LadyMorg0240. And from what I understand, you have a statement that you wish to make.
Yes, because I listened last week's podcast back when we had finished in the last week, and I can see why people would maybe have a problem with what I said and how it may not come out the way I wanted it to as far as what I was talking about as far as like fans and their opinions. I just wanted to clarify some of my statements on there because I was tired, I'm old, and I don't really have a lot of patience for a lot of this PC culture and whatnot, but I had a little bit of time to think, like, okay, what would be the best way to explain my feelings on this, okay? Because I feel like my words made it sound like the fans' opinions don't matter, and like only people in the industry, their opinions matter, period, and the fans should not have their voices heard. Folks, that is not what I meant to say at all, because what I said was taken probably out of context by a lot of people that might listen to the podcast. I'm going to clarify my stance on this, because the fans are the ones who make this industry go, because they're the ones who are paying their hard-earned money to be able to go and see us perform and keep this business going and have people be able to pay their bills and whatnot. And they are definitely entitled to their opinion, what they like, what they don't like. They can cheer for who they want to cheer, boo who they want to boo. That is entirely up to them. They can dislike anything they want, and they can like anything they want that we put out, and they have the freedom to be able to say that, and I am 100% for that. What I have a problem with is fans who think they know more than the people in the industry coming up to wrestlers telling them how to wrestle and bookers how to book, or bookers how to book, and how promotions should be run when they've never done that day in their life. Those are the type of people I cannot stand in this industry. It's like, you pay your hard-earned money and you have your right to your opinion, but to go and tell people, it's like, man, you're running the show flat ass backwards, you need to be running it this way, and you've never had experience doing it. Because if I were to take any advice from 99% of the people that do that, it would actually go the opposite direction and make it worse. Yes, we need the fans to be able to tell them tell us what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, so we can book accordingly to that, and their opinion definitely matters. And there's a lot of good fan-based sites on the internet that enjoy wrestling, that like talking about it, and even come up with good ideas for angles. I'll give them that. But to actually go and tell, because I'll give you one instance. I was at the weighing room. I was working for PWP in 2015 or 2016, something like that. And this one guy came up to me, and I think he's in the music scene. And he was telling me how I need to do my gimmick and why, I'm not getting over as well as I could. It's like, you need to do this, and this. I wanted to beat the living shit out of him, because there's so many things that he didn't know about the wrestling industry. And I know he meant well. But at the same time, you don't go up to wrestlers, tell them, this is how you need to do this, and this. And they are not, the wrestlers are the ones that are having to make money off this stuff. And you haven't had to do that. So it's like, as far as that goes, why should I take advice from somebody who hasn't had to do that? If you have an opinion, you are more than entitled to it, but at the same time, don't be going up to people that are professionals and been doing this to try to feed their family, telling them how they need to do this when you don't have the experience. That was what I was having a problem with, and that's why I think Meltzer does, and I don't listen to a damn thing he says. I even think Vince Russo has more credibility than him, because Russo's been there and done that. So I'll go ahead and leave the floor open for the rest of the podcast. I just wanted to clarify that up.
Alrighty. Jargon of the day. We have Rudo, Technico, and Monster Heel.
Well, I mean, Monster Heel is technically a Rudo, but yeah.
Well, Rudos. I mean, is there a difference between a heel and a Rudo?
No, it's basically the same thing. The Rudos are basically the baddies, or the heels, the baddies. That's the context that I've heard them be called. But Rudo is basically the Spanish and Japanese term for heel.
All right, and technico is the Spanish and Japanese term for babyface.
Yep.
So what differentiates a heel and a monster heel?
Well, basically, there are multiple different types of heel. It's kind of like a spectrum. But usually a monster heel is kind of like Frankenstein or like Godzilla. Basically a heel that just seems completely unstoppable regardless of what any babyface can do to him. And it's like when you've finally slayed that monster heel, it's like slaying the dragon like Shrek or something like that. I don't know. The best way to describe it is like it's the equivalent to David and Goliath has gone through all these Israeli soldiers from that time period, and finally David comes over and slays the monster heel. So basically it's like booking Goliath.
Okay. So let's go through a few of the more historical heels in wrestling history. I mean,
we're going way back.
We're going way back. Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous George, he was the originator because he was the first one to actually go out of his way to try and make fans hate him. It's like he had the long blonde hair, the robes, he'd throw hair clips out to the people, and he was actually going out of his way trying to make people dislike him, but at the same time, even though they disliked him, he was extremely entertaining, and they actually wanted to pay to see him do his shtick and get his ass kicked.
Nature Boy Buddy Rogers.
See Gorgeous George. Except Buddy, he actually changed the business in a lot of contexts as far as psychology goes, because he was one of the first guys to do like high spots, like chain moves together. It's like one tackle, drop down, hip toss, drop kick, go again. It's like he was tremendously athletic. He was really good at psychology. He was a really good talker. He was a world champion at least 2-3 times in his career. And he actually wrestled until like maybe his late 50s or early 60s, I believe.
So, alrighty. Bobby Heenan.
The greatest wrestling manager in the history, and also one of the greatest wrestlers in history. Not a lot of people know that because he didn't wrestle regularly, but he played the shtick so well of the psychology of wrestle like a manager and manage like a wrestler. It's like you're really cocky out on the outside. You're like, your man's got this. And then when you get back in that ring, you got to be a chicken shit. You got to be back up. It's like, no, please don't do this. I don't do this. Even when you're in the match, he'd be like being chased around like a mad dog with Sean, or even a Greg Gagne. He'd chase him, be chased out of the ring, go out to the outside, they'd chase him back in, and they'd finally do a high spot, and he'd take a bump out of that. And it's like it was like being able to get that giant payoff after he's interfered in your matches like 5 or 6 times.
Harley Race.
Greatest world champion this business has ever had, especially for a heel. Harley was wonderful at being able to go to a crowd that he's never been in and be able to automatically have people want to see him get beat for his world title. He was basically one the same as Buddy Rogers. Like, he's not talked about how much of a great athlete he was just because of his physique, and he was a chain smoker, heavy drinker, and all that, and didn't really look like he was a in shape guy because he was built more like a power lifter than a bodybuilder. But man, he could just go, taking like the flare bump off the top rope. He's the wrestler that first started doing that. He'd take backdrops better than any wrestler. Pick up, get slammed. Taking bumps over the top rope backwards. I mean, he would make that babyface look so great for a full hour and just slip out the back door either with the draw or with a slick 1, 2, 3. Harley was just the best world champion.
And speaking of flare bumps, we have Ric Flair next.
He was basically the one that followed Harley and did his shtick just as well as him. It's like if you combined Nature Boy Buddy Rogers and Harley Race, you get Ric Flair, because Flair would actually add a lot of the he was a lot more vocal in the ring than Harley, even though Harley was vocal. Flair would go, God. It's like, because he took a lot of his style from that, and he also took a lot of his shtick from Dusty Rhodes, even though he was a babyface as far as talking, because Harley had that really slow, methodical promo that kind of drew you in very slowly. Flair was like, woo, all over the place, like it just how he is.
Speaking of all over the place, Roddy Piper.
Well, son, I mean, it's like, greatest heel that never won a world title, in my opinion. Roddy Piper got off on pissing people off and made people want to see him get his ass kicked, and always slid out either with like a count out or disqualification, so he knew how to have people keep coming, because he knew there was more money in him actually not getting beat as opposed to actually going out there getting beat, because he knew that he could use that shtick over and over and over again and come back to the same town and give them, like, let the babyface have their way with him, blah, 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 and, be able to go out there and get, like, either a cheap victory or that. So, because Piper was like just that one heel you just couldn't get one up on.
Jake Roberts.
Greatest psychologist in the history of this industry. Jake Roberts went out there and did no stupid shit whatsoever. He made everything mean something. He made everybody, borderline afraid of him. Not quite to the point of a monster heel, but it's like, damn, this dude, I don't want to be in a parking lot with him. He probably hit me over the head with a tire iron, take my wallet, and stuff me in the trunk of his car. He looked like just a guy that's like one of those seedy guys on in the rough part of town, where you lock your windows when you're driving through it. Like he just wanted to come out there and just do whatever he wanted to do to have his way with you in the ring. It's like that, and that's why also the Snake played a huge part when he went to WWF. Being able to just get in the head of everybody and snap that DDT on. Pardon me, I've had too much caffeine. So
let's skip over to monster heels, and he's like, especially we were talking about them in the jargon, but is Vader the first one that comes into mind for historical monster heels, or is there any earlier ones?
First real monster heel, if you ask me, would probably to an extent be Bruiser Brody. Because, like, even though Brody would sell a lot, he was that big, rough, tough guy that, the people were legitimately afraid of. And, you could actually make a case even before Brody, the original Sheik. Because even though he wasn't a big guy, he had great psychology. He'd run, he'd come back, hit you with a weapon. It's like the people were legitimately afraid of him, because I'll actually give you a great story from Bobby Heenan, because he and the Sheik were very, very close. The Sheik had somebody, because he ran in Detroit territory, from the National Arab Anti-Defamation League come down, because the Iron Sheik, the original Sheik, even though he was born in Michigan, his family was Lebanese. They immigrated here, and he was born here. And they were like, it's like, he's not a real Arab, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, send him on in here. And they ran out of that room after he was chasing them around. They believed after that. He was the most believable, and this will also play in later, but for one of the best foreign heels of all time. So, but I would say probably the Sheik, then Bruiser Brody kind of followed him. But Big Van Vader was the first wrestler that I was legitimately scared of when I saw him. I mean, WCW Vader, when he was just going and hammering guys, he was tall, 6'4", 450 pounds. It seemed like he was just invincible, flew like a cat, but at the same time, he would get back. He would take bumps for wrestlers when it was the right time. He had Harley Race as a manager that, when he was being rocked, and Harley would go in and do something, maybe cost that babyface a win, Vader would give him with a big splash or something, but it just seemed like that monster you just couldn't beat unless you took his wheels out from the right way.
Well, speaking of monster heels. I mean, there are several heel formulas that have gone through the ages and whatnot. I mean, it's like certain types of heels that have gotten status, or is like what to do in order to become a heel. And the first one that you mentioned previously was the wrestling heel.
Yeah, perfect example, Kurt Angle. Olympic gold medalist. He always wrestled, but at the same time, because he would get frustrated easily, because what dictates whether you're a heel or a face psychology-wise isn't necessarily your moveset, it's your attitude. And Kurt had a very better-than-you attitude when he was a heel, and even though he would take somebody down, he'd rub their face in the mat, he'd get cocky, he'd throw a cheap shot, he'd pull the hair when he'd, be in a hold instead of fighting out. I mean, you have the credibility to be able to do that, and you're cheating? What the hell's wrong with you?
And now we have, when we're talking about Heenan, the chicken shit.
Oh, yeah. Ric Flair, too, begging off Harley, beg off, oh, please, God, no. Superstar Billy Graham, even though he was a big, muscle man, he would, do the chicken shit routine when it was time. So that's, about as old school as you can get. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers would do that. Who'd be another great example of that?
DiBiase?
He would do that a little bit, yeah. Even though he was a little bit bigger, yeah.
We already talked about monsters. The Aristocrat.
Flair would be kind of in there, but the first name that comes to mind for an aristocratic heel is Alberto Del Rio. It's like, I know his name's a little bit controversial right now with all the court cases he's been through, even though he's been found, not guilty in court of law. A lot of people still dislike him. But, brother, first name that comes to mind when it comes to, like, an aristocratic heel, or, like, maybe a Tiger Ali Singh. It was kind of the first one that I saw of that aristocratic heel, or even to a degree a young Randy Orton, because he was a second generation prodigy. You could make that case on there, but basically somebody who thinks that they're better than everybody because of their wealth and social status. I mean, DiBiase is another one. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so what you got next?
Foreign.
USA Hawk 2. Iron Sheik.
The original Hawk 2.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if they would have had a crossover at some point, or a collaboration. But yeah, the Iron Sheik, basically all the great foreign heels like a Fritz von Erich, especially after World War II. Pak Song Nam is another great example, because he turned Dusty Rhodes face in Florida after we got our asses kicked in Vietnam. Let's see, obviously the Russians like Nikolai Volkov, Nikita and Ivan Koloff, Rusev most recently, because anybody that's opposing the USA from another country or synthesizing with another country, even when Sergeant Slaughter, was the Iraqi synthesizer, it's like anybody that, goes against the good old USA, anybody can just get behind that, because they're just seeing this as another foreign war, just another, instead of shooting each other with bullets, they're shooting each other with fireballs and chair shots, pretty much.
Okay, so after all of this explanation about heels, why are they getting cheered?
Because some heels, I'll give you a great example. Ole Anderson was in the locker room bitching about, in the 70s, about how Ric Flair was ineffective as a heel. Ric effing Flair, one of the greatest that has ever walked the face of this earth to do this. He said that he was ineffective as a heel, and it's like, well, why is that? Because this story is from Lanny Poffo, rest his soul. Ole says, like, well, he has 70% of the people, booing him, but he's got like 30% actually applauding him, cheering him when he's working. And when we work, we get 100% boos, yeah. But Lanny's retort to that was, yeah, but at the same time, he's drawing bigger houses than you. People actually want to come see him perform, because Gorgeous George even had his fans. Like, Muhammad Ali is on record saying that he got his spiel as far as his talk and float like a butterfly, sting like a bee from Gorgeous George, because he grew up watching him when he was a teenager and started, going through the ranks of, heavyweight boxing. So it's like, even though people still hated Ric Flair, people still enjoyed his shtick because he was so entertaining in the ring. The way he'd fly around, flop like a fish, take bumps for him. It was entertaining to watch, and they enjoyed it. And it's like, if you entertain as a heel, eventually you are going to have people start liking you, especially if you're really good at it. I mean, Bobby Heenan, people hated Heenan, but at the same time, they wanted to see him talk, do his promos, do his humor, insult wrestlers, because it's entertaining. So it's like that. I mean, it's like, but kayfabe is dead. We all know it. But at the same time, the way this business survives is entertainment, entertaining the people, and have their right to say what they like or dislike.
Alrighty, so why are the baby faces getting heat?
A lot of reasons. I mean, you could make the case of, they're ineffective as a babyface, which is true, but a lot of baby faces, I'll give you a great example. Back in the 60s, how familiar are you with, like, the old Western movies?
Not too much.
Okay. All the Hollywood Western movies would have somebody go and, have their, horse stolen or their wife kidnapped or something like that, and at the end of the movie they get it because the cowboy that have to go and do it, he'd, do no wrongs. Like, he'd stay by his morals. Clint Eastwood outdrew every single one of them when he was the man with no name in the Fistful of Dollars trilogy, with Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more than The Good, Bad, the Ugly. Even though he was technically the protagonist, he was an anti-face or an anti-hero. Basically, because even though he was the one that you were rooting for, he didn't really have the qualities of, being a pure moralist as far as the sense goes for, being the protagonist, because he was just a badass who went out and did whatever he wanted to do, and a lot more people identify with somebody that just goes out and does whatever he wants and is cheered for it. I mean, it's like, perfect example. Dusty Rhodes figured that out years ago, because he would always do the angle to where he was the Midnight Rider, but leading up to that, he would get so mad at another heel that he'd beat him up with a baseball bat or a tire iron or try to hang him. Then he'd come back as the Midnight Rider under the hood and do the same thing over. It's like, but this isn't Dusty Rhodes, this is Midnight Rider. Fans want somebody that they can vicariously live through. Perfect example, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Mm-hmm. What about Steve Austin is morally good in the common eye?
That he takes no crap from anybody.
And that's what people love. But he swears like a trucker. He drinks beer by the gallon. He uses obscene gestures and, beats up his boss. How many people would that be celebrated for doing that on 6 o'clock news?
Mm-hmm. Well, this brings us to our next point.
Mm-hmm.
Face versus heel used to be about the fight between good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of slowly emerged, especially with the Attitude Era and whatnot, into popularity over
Mm-hmm.
good and evil.
To an extent, yes. But the basically best way to put it, if the people start cheering you, they're eventually going to turn you babyface and make you perfect example. Every heel needs to have the opportunity to have some kind of moral good about them, and every babyface needs to have the ability to have some moral fault about them, because that's what makes them human. And popularity, basically, if you're feeding the people what they want as opposed to what they don't want, they're going to start cheering you even if you're a heel, because you're entertaining, and then they realize, okay, we could make more money with this person as a babyface because they're cheering him. It's like going back to Steve Austin, him against Bret Hart, WrestleMania 13. They did the double switch on there. Bret was talking about how I'm so moral, so good and all that, I'm such a fair sport, and you're booing me? F you. And Steve Austin just refused to give up and take any crap from Bret, even though he was not the squeaky clean babyface. But then again, it worked because Steve was getting popular as a babyface because people wanted to vicariously live through him, and Bret Hart, was kind of like a perfect example. Are you familiar with the song Miracle Man by Ozzy Osbourne?
No, I'm not.
Okay. basically, it was talking about, I believe, Jimmy Swaggart when he got caught with an affair and all that. And he was talking about how, shitty of a person Ozzy Osbourne was. Then he gets caught on that, and Ozzy calls him out on the song. Same thing. Yep.
So, despite having to deal with the whole good versus evil and it's like the switcherooskies and stuff like that, and how do you sell merch as a heel?
Be entertaining.
Be entertaining.
That simple. How many shirts has Ric Flair sold?
Too many.
How many?
Now he's selling energy drinks. Now he's selling whiskey.
Wooski!
Wooski.
Yeah, he's just dropped earlier today that he's selling his own brand of Kentucky bourbon.
Oh, bourbon, not... Oh.
Well, no, all bourbons are whiskey, but not all whiskeys are bourbon. Do keep that in mind.
Oh, thank you.
But basically, if you're entertaining, people will want to buy you and support you even though you're technically the bad guy in the film or in the ring. But because I was actually thinking about it, it's like, shoot, what's a good entertaining heel in a film? First thing comes to mind that sells a lot of merch. Mine's Darth Vader.
Right.
Because Darth Vader was entertaining in the Star Wars trilogy and pre-trilogy and all that nonsense. So.
Well, I mean, it's like how Negan was popular in Walking Dead.
Exactly.
Where, everyone bought his figurines and stuff like that instead of like the main heroes, and
they appreciate the job that you do, even though you're the one that's supposed to be the antagonist, because you're good at your job and you make people forget about their, heels can make people put a smile on their face. It's just that simple.
Alrighty, so how does one do their job well as a heel?
Number one, be entertaining. Obviously, we've said
You've
that.
said that, yeah.
Be entertaining. Number two, don't make your baby face look stupid. Don't put him in positions where he's going to be stupid. A good heel should know how to try and make his baby face look good and make him the one in the fight that, goes and fights from underneath and makes that comeback, and the people want to see him, make that comeback. And it's up to you to make that comeback as entertaining as you can. Be able to sell for your baby face. Obviously, don't go and you can do some cheap heat depending on your character, but don't fully rely on it because that'll get old really, really quick. In spurts, it's good, but know how to find the most despicable ways of humanity that humanity dislikes and capitalize on them, but make it entertaining too. Because a heel is supposed to be in the embodiment of everything that is dislikable in humanity. That's something that I heard from Jim Cornette and William Regal both. Yep.
So, to put everything into a short thing, we have to consider that it's the heel's job to be entertaining as well as a jerk off.
And a leader, too.
And a leader.
It's the heel's job most of the time, unless the heel's very inexperienced, to lead the match and tell the babyface where to go and where to be, because it's his job to make that babyface look as good as he can.
Do you think there's a difference between playing a heel in the big leagues and playing a heel on the indies?
Not really. No, you have a little bit more of a personal relationship with the fans when you're a heel on the indies. Of course, everybody knows, it's a work. It's it's not, immoral to go and take pictures with the fans if you're a heel and all that. But at the same time, it's when you're at the show, I try to be in character. I see a lot of people that have that same philosophy, and I agree with that and respect that philosophy.
Awesome sauce.
Because we don't want to ruin it for the fans.
No, we never want to ruin it for the fans. Alrighty, it's time to take it home.
Oh, I wanted another 5-minute overtime.
We talked about the 5-minute overtime. We don't get a 5-minute overtime.
But I'm a heel. I need those 5 extra minutes to be on the babyface some more because I ain't done yet.
Thank you that wasn't on my arm.
Oh, I could do it on the arm, especially because that's the working arm.
No. I'm Sarah Whitaker.
And Salty Dulty, who's pissed off and mad about it.
Here for Working the World. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube with Sarah Whitaker at Lady Morgue 0240. Thank you for joining us and stay classy.
San Diego.
San Diego. Bye-bye.